Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second session of Limitless 2022 for Children, for Change, for Life, World Vision's Asia Summit for Corporate Good. We continue with our second session. Is technology an enabler or a barrier for equitable education? The pandemic has disrupted education of more than 750 million children across the region. Remote learning was quickly adapted, but did it reach all? Is education at this day and age truly equitable and accessible? The key experts that you see on the panel will come together in this session to discuss their thoughts on technology being an enabler or barrier for equitable education. We have Hoshia Lai, Regional Director of Microsoft Philanthropies for the Asia Pacific region. Hoshia's whole core work involves reaching the underserved communities with skills training so that they can participate in the digital economy across the region. Along the way, he hopes to inspire everyone to help others in providing that opportunity without biases. His motto, do good and have fun along the way. We also have Abhishek Gupta, CEO and co-founder of Navgurkul, an IIT Delhi alumnus and a software engineer. Mr. Abhishek Gupta leads Navgurkul, a non-profit which runs a one-year job-guaranteed residential course for women from rural and tribal India. More than 750 students from 20-plus states in India stay on their campus, learn and get jobs as software programmers without a degree, college professor, or exams. We are also joined by Heather Suksem, Deputy Chairman of OCS ROH Limited. Ms. Heather led the region for OCS Group, known as PCS in Thailand, to position itself as a leading total facilitations management provider in the region, growing the business from 1 country to 10 countries and a team from 1,000 to 57,000 staff. The panel is also honored to have Anusha Els, Head of CSR Brandix International, and also the Project Director for Right to Read Sri Lanka. Following a stint in the UN in 2007, Ms. Anusha Els developed and headed the Corporate Social Responsibility Division of Brandix Lanka Limited, Sri Lanka's largest apparel company. In 2021, she was appointed CEO of Right to Read Sri Lanka, a non-profit national program to initiate technology-enabled learning in English reading across public schools. Anusha currently serves as director on several boards, including World Vision Sri Lanka. Leading this relevant, timely, and insightful conversation is Lilian Chung. Lilian is the CEO and National Director of World Vision Singapore. She has more than 25 years' experience in the information and communication technology industry. Over to you, Lilian.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lilian, and I will be your moderator for this session. And the session, as you all know, is aptly titled, Is Technology an Enabler or is it a Barrier for Equitable Education? I think this is a very close topic to many people who's actually joining in. We see like 59, 60 people in session right now. And all of us during the pandemic have experienced technology in varying degrees, whether personally or if we have children at home, they are accessing their school sessions using technology. And I'm sure we all have an opinion and a viewpoint on whether technology is an enabler or is it an inhibitor, actually. So the question here actually involves a lot of possible discussions for those who have access, those who do not have access, and what is the definition of equitable education, and what does it look like to have quality education for all, which is really an SDG goal as well. And joining us are 4 very, very esteemed, distinguished panelists. They all represent different countries, from Sri Lanka, from Thailand, from Singapore, as well as from India. So they do represent really a different variety of contexts and also different perspectives, right? Whether it's a big organization, a small organization, locally or globally. So they will have very, very good insights as they unpack this topic a little bit more. So without further ado, let me just kick off with the first question, right, to the panelists that we have today. And the first question really is, all of you, as the host has introduced herself, are really passionate about literacy, about education. And I'm sure you have a perspective of technology and how it enables or not. Maybe start by really sharing a little bit about your organization and why you're so passionate about what you do every day as it relates to education. And I'm gonna do this alphabetically. Maybe I invite Anusha, and I say this even though it should be Abhishek, right? But then, ladies first. Anusha, will you take it away and just share a little bit?
Thank you, Lillian. Welcome, everyone. So my name is Anusha Lasam. I work for a company called Brandix in Sri Lanka. We are a parallel company, but we are also a company that's very much interested in technology and AI. So just to quickly give you a brief about why we decided to take on a project called Right to Read, which I'm a CEO, is because what we realize is English, it's basically an English teaching tool. And what we realize is English is something that's very, very much lacking in Sri Lanka. So we thought, let's concentrate on that and see how we can improve the level of English in Sri Lanka. We've come up with a lot of challenges, which I think during the panel discussion we'll all be talking about. So I won't go into that now. But as a company and personally, working with children on any level, be it education, health, social skills, is something not only this company is very passionate about, but also I am. So it's been an interesting journey. Thank you, Lillian.
Thank you so much. And maybe moving on to Abhishek. Abhishek, would you like to share a little bit about your
Sure.
passion in this area?
Yeah, thank you, Lillian and Anusha. So, this is Abhishek. Welcome, everyone. I lead an organization called Navgurukul, where we host residential programs for students from most marginalized communities, especially the rural and tribal India, and get them guaranteed jobs, which pays them at least 20 to 25,000 rupees INR, which is roughly 4x of what they would have earned otherwise, as software programmers. And we have also started courses in design management recently. The idea for us is to deliver higher education. One of the reasons why we feel really passionate about working in education sector, especially higher education, is because it allows people to sort of realize their own aspirations and then solve their own problems. I think a lot of problems that we solve as a sector is for solving someone else. But when we work with our students, we see them essentially coming to a place where they can represent their own problems and work around them. And that's what gets me really excited on this.
Thank you so much. So I hear, giving children the opportunity to read, to be literate, to actually be able to see the world and have access to information, and also allowing people to really fulfill their aspirations as they learn new skills, whether it's in a technology side. So that sounds great. Let me move on to Heather. Heather, you want to share a little bit about your passion?
Thank you, Lillian. Thank you. Yes, I've been in Thailand nearly 40 years now, and have worked with OCS and PCS for 35 years. Our business is a people business. We provide facility services and security and cleaning, food, engineering. So our business relates to people. Education is very key. And we're always very short of people. In Thailand, the education is a challenge. Our ratings on education tend to be lower than the OECD average. So education has always been a major focus from PCS here. Our founder and former chairman was always very focused on education, whether it was giving scholarships to our own children, our own employees' children, or working with children in the communities, especially those that have been affected. In the early 90s, he worked a lot with children affected by AIDS. So we see education is key for our company, for the future of Thailand as well, and enabling children to reach their full potential. So we don't want children to miss out on the education opportunity, and we want them to work with us and work with other organizations. So education is very key to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather. And Jose, you want to share a little bit about your perspective?
Sure. Thanks, Lillian. And just hearing, the other panelists, it's just amazing to hear the empowerment of education. For me, like I mentioned, right, education is actually a huge empowerment tool. If I just do a quick sharing of my own, life story, I grew up in a low-income family in Singapore. As much as you talk about Singapore being a developed country, growing up, it was actually a developing country, and you know, my parents placed a lot of emphasis on education, right? So like many parents do in Asia, and and that emphasis on education and the ability to get an education has brought actually many people out of poverty in Singapore. And that's why, really for me, besides it being a very personal experience for me, you know, we have seen how technology in the past 2 years, 2.5 years with COVID has also accelerated, the ability for people to be connected to education. And that in itself is why I am super passionate. At Microsoft itself, I work for Microsoft, leading social impact for Microsoft in APAC itself, and how, you know, marrying the tools as well as education has also allowed various opportunities for people, underserved communities, underrepresented communities in the region to actually, get out of poverty, get themselves employed. And that's really why, to see, that passion is so strong.
Thank you, Jose. And actually, you know what? You summarize it really, really well. Although Anusha, Heather, and Abhishek never really spoke about it that way, but having interacted with all of you, one thing that came out very strongly across the different sessions that we had was a firm conviction that ability for children to access education, to access knowledge, and to know what they can or cannot do, making informed decisions, having the opportunities to explore their potential is one of the key success factor of breaking away and out of the cycle of poverty. So I hear that in all the different chats that we have, and it's really evident in the different areas that you're focusing on, whether it's education for children, whether it's technology, and I guess equipping them with technology so that they are a little bit more tuned into the digital world, or the right to read. I think all this is really evident in all the different areas that you've spoken about. But having said that, the last 2 years have really also surfaced a lot of challenges as it relates to technology. All of you, I'm sure, have experienced it as you see the work, whether it's your own organization or partnering organizations, as we all struggle actually to figure out how do we educate a generation of children that is really suffering as a result of the COVID lockdowns, not having access to schools, not having access to teachers. So really the second question I have for the panelists is really, how can organizations reduce these barriers to equitable education? And is really the role that technology can play, is it really as an enabler, or has it really created more barriers? And I'm sure, having heard all of you, you all have very passionate ideas about it. I'm going to put Heather a little bit on the spot and let Heather take this away first. Heather, you want to speak a little bit about what you shared yesterday?
Thank you. Yes, technology, definitely over the pandemic time, technology has been a challenge, certainly in Thailand. And we've got families that have not, and children that have not been educated because they've not had the ability, they've not had the technology there. And they've not had the phones, or there's been families, or there's been orphanages that have been trying to work and study with very little technology. So it's been a major issue. What we've got to do now is to enable and ensure that technology now enables the education, and we need to speed up on that. So from my experience, what we've done through the organization and through working with other organizations is to be linked to organizations that are working together to ensure that children and youth are educated, so that they can become part of the workforce go down the line. And the organisations that we've been working with is like the Joint Foreign Chambers. The Joint Foreign Chambers have got an education and skills committee, and they've been working with schools. There's one school that they've worked with, because the emphasis has been on the teachers, and really getting the trust of the teachers. And as the Education and Skills Committee there has worked with the teachers in one school in the provinces, there's been a donation of a large amount of money to build accommodation for the teachers. So teachers will stay in that school, and then they work with the children there to give opportunities to the children. Other organisations, there's also the foreign chambers, there's the embassies. The British Embassy's got a programme called Rapid, and that's ensuring that all children are reached. So there's certainly, and in the schools, in the private schools, in the international schools, they've been working, there's been organisations and schools working together with schools in the provinces within the region. And so it's real teacher to teacher, and there's helping there and supporting the teachers. So there's a lot of organisations working together, whether it's on the Thai Federation of Industries, the Board of Trade, the chambers, the embassies, a lot of organisations working there to focus on education and to really give opportunities to children, but working together, not just giving technology. It's working, educating, teaching the teachers, getting the trust of teachers, and also being involved with the teachers at the school and the heads of the school, and also supporting the students as well. So there's a lot going on, and it's great to be involved with all these organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Heather. So one of the things that Heather was sharing with me yesterday that I think is important, right, for all of us to appreciate and to understand that it is a holistic approach and it's an ecosystem. And one of the things that Heather kept emphasizing when we were chatting yesterday was that we are in the people business, right? So this is Heather saying we are in the people business. And it's so true, because one of the things she shared is that, we can provide all the hardware and all the digital content that we want, but at the end of the day, the person delivering it and making it come to life is really the teachers. So how we enabling the teachers, how we motivating the teachers to also keep pace with how things are changing or adapting, so that they can continue to be that source of inspiration for the students and for the children to want to learn more and want to engage more. So I thought that was a really good perspective, that sometimes, in the desire to do good and to do good quickly, we might forget that, it's about the people and the ecosystem that makes this a holistic transformation. I want to actually reach out to Anusha right now. She's in a very challenging environment right now. And, I remember our chat when you said, it's all well and good, we can talk about digital transformation and everything else, but when you're caught in a conflict or a very turbulent context and an environment, right, how do you even bring the right to read or education to life when you're struggling with your basic needs? Anusha, share a little bit more.
Lillian, unfortunately, this whole crisis in Sri Lanka has, shown the glaring differences between, and I think we spoke about this some time ago, between the have and the have-nots. So the ones who have access to technology, the sky's the limit for them now. But the ones who don't, you can feel the resentment, even virtually, even when we manage to get them on online classes. So one of the challenges that we've been facing is, trying to be fair across the board. One of the things that we've tried to do now is to concentrate mainly as an organization on those schools and those villages which actually do not have access to online teaching. So we're working very closely with the ministry, and we've told the ministry, listen, we are funding it. You just have to give us the access to these areas which don't have anything. And like you said, their priorities are different. It's basically survival now. But surprisingly, most of the parents realize that the only way to keep the children on the right track is through education. So we've been working with the ministry. It's been a challenge. I mean, it's easier said than done, I must say. We've been working with the ministry to target only those very rural areas, which means we have the infrastructure has to be put into place: electricity, internet connection, laptops, smart boards, all that. So it's been happening, but it's been slow and frustrating. I'm being very honest here because of the current situation in Sri Lanka. But like I said before, the gap, you can feel the gap getting wider and wider. So when we talk about education, we have to know who we are talking to at that point, and we have to adjust what we say according to who is listening, because otherwise it just causes a lot of resentment.
Thank you so much, Anusha. And one of the things that you also emphasized, as Heather has also mentioned as well, is really partnerships, really working with different actors on the ground to really bring across the whole value chain of delivering equitable education to all, right?
Absolutely.
And that in itself is a pretty long journey. And it's many times like what you've shared, right? A very frustrating one as well, because different people will come from different perspective. They have their own objectives that they want to meet. So how do you actually bring everything together in a holistic way that will change the lives of children, right? And again, you emphasize what Hosea has also shared as well, that in Asia especially, right, fundamentally we believe that education do break the cycle of poverty. So how do you allow children access to that? I'm going to reach out to the gentleman right now because they are the techies in this group, right? And so I guess the question is, I don't think that there is any debate about the fact that technology actually is an enabler. But I think the nuanced part of this session is really how do you, from your lens and your perspective, coming from the tech world, see technology actually delivering equitable education? How do you reach that last child in a rural area? How do you reach that last child who don't have access to, I guess, broadband, hardware, software, digital content, right? So what are some aspirations that Hosea yourself have? And also what does Microsoft have as an aspiration? Because, Microsoft obviously is one organization that we look to for some of these thought leadership. So over to you.
Thanks, Lillian. That's a really tough question.
I know it is. I told you, I promised you I'll set you on, I put you on the spot. And I'm just up to it.
which you definitely did. My answer is the same as the two amazing ladies, before me, which is it's all about partnerships, right? A lot of times we actually think that, Microsoft is one of the biggest companies in the world. It has all the solutions in the world. We don't. That's the reality, right? Even from a Microsoft, perspective, when you're looking at social impact, when we're looking at Microsoft philanthropies, we do a lot of partnerships. We partner with nonprofit organizations, we partner with international organizations, multilateral organizations, internet NGOs like World Vision. We partner with governments, right, in the places where we work. So while the question is, what asset do we bring that can value add to what the world needs? And I think that's really the crux of the question here, at least for us at Microsoft. Just to give you an example, when we're talking about COVID and how the sad truth is, and the reality is, in the past 2 years, 2.5 years, you actually do have a group of children who have lost 2 years of education, right? And with the world opening up and they're going back to school, they are starting together with children who are 2 years younger than them because they've lost 2 years. So how can tech enable? How did Microsoft work? So we partner with a UN organization to create a program, what we call the Learning Passport, right? And that in itself is actually a digital platform where children can continue their education, in partnership with UN, who actually does a lot of amazing work on the ground to reach the last mile, right? And we have actually done this in refugee camps. We have done this, in rural areas where they have access to devices, they have access to internet, in partnership with local governments, in partnership with the UN organization, in partnership with the local NGOs and nonprofit organizations. And we bring the platform, the technology from Microsoft to enable them to be educated for the past 2 years. And that's really where we are coming from. Have we reached out to the whole world? The answer is no. And that's why this is, an ongoing work for each and every one of us.
Thank you. And as you have promised, you rose to the occasion. I think it's true. One of the things that you shared, which I think is very important for everyone in the audience to bear in mind, right? It's what Hosea shared was, what assets do you bring to the table? I think that's one perspective as well. And the other one that World Vision also is very mindful whenever we do our development work, is always asking, what assets do the community have? Because the communities do have assets. And very often, right, we walk into some of these programs or these areas, and we assume wrongly that the community does not have assets. They do. They have assets, right? We just need to know what they have. It could be like Heather's point, right? There could be a lot of very passionate teachers who just need to be retrained, reskilled, for example, right? And not saying that there's no assets in the community. So it's two sides of the coin. One is, what assets do we in I guess the developed world have, and that we can bring to the table, and match that with what assets the community have, whether it's the local stakeholders like the governments, the province leaders, whether it's the community themselves. These are all different assets that we can bring together. And I think, again, Hosea has shared very passionately about partnerships and collaborations. There's something there. And for those, the 116 people that I see that are listening in right now, is really thinking about, who are the people you can collaborate with? What assets do each of you bring to the table? How can we drive greater impact when two people come together or two organizations come together? The force of that impact is definitely more than two. And last but not least, our gentleman, Abhishek. Abhishek, you are also in the tech space, and you're really looking at enabling a very digital native generation, right? So tell us a little bit more about technology really becoming an enabler, I guess, in equitable education. Tell us more.
Right. So I think my view especially is that technology can solve many problems, but definitely not all. So especially when we start relying too much on technology, it becomes a problem. And that's where COVID sort of forced organizations to rely, okay, there's just going to be online classes and you have to figure your way out around there. And now is a very good time to sort of zoom out of that situation and figure out hybrid approaches where technology can deliver on certain areas and where certain areas we don't use it for. For instance, administration of the programs, operations of the program is where technology can easily automate things. In terms of delivering content, at least what we have seen, especially with younger children, there are struggles. It also links to reducing their attention span even further than what it is right now. With higher education, especially, technology has a lot of benefits, especially because the people who are coming, they're already older, and the attention span to the content can be higher than young children. Especially, technology can help us to bring content from across the globe and make sure that the most amazing content is being used. But it's very interesting. Even in residential programs, we have our own platform we deliver through it. But these students still have to come to a residential program. And the reason why we do it despite essentially delivering technologically is because of the fact that, especially when we work with women, what we have seen is in their villages and their houses, even if they have a smartphone, it is mostly used by the male siblings of them. So essentially, I mean, even though you may provide laptops, you may provide internet, you may provide all other facilities, even then there are different kinds of inequities that might perpetuate socially. So similar experiences have been there by other NGOs where they have tried to offer resources to a community, and within the same community, they found out that the devices were not shared fairly. And that's where, at least as an organization, while we use technology for a multitude of functions, we at least make sure that there's a very strong component of fairness which comes from methods which are completely outside technology for us.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that Abhishek didn't really speak a lot about, but it's something that he clearly is very passionate about, is really having different type of residential courses for women from rural and tribal India, right? And we all know some of the the more vulnerable groups tend to be children and women. And so one of the things that that his organization does is really focusing on how do you actually skill up or provide opportunities for women. And I think that is something that is super admirable. And also the fact that you are investing in programming and digital content is something that is going to help level the playing field a lot more. And I like the point that you raised about the fact that one of the things about technology and education is the ability to scale. So when you have a really good piece of digital content, you do not have to wait to train another 10 teachers or another 100 teachers before you actually can reach out to the masses. So that you can actually reach to the last rural person or child or woman standing there just because technology allows it. And then you are then able to the ability to then develop the kind of talent within that community without them having to go into the cities, making that big transition and that big move, right, which is usually very expensive. So in many ways, technology actually have the ability to scale, which traditional methods will take time. It's not that it cannot be done, but it will take a lot longer than what technology can enable. So really amazing what they are doing there. Thank you so much, Abhishek, for sharing. And I'm going to switch to the third question right now because you've shared so much about the areas of work, the joys that you get, the challenges that you face as the context changes and change actually over the last 2 years. So one of the questions I'm sure is in the minds of the people listening in and watching this fireside chat is, it sounds like, I'm really convicted. I really want to do this. I believe in education, in breaking the cycle of poverty. I think technology is a great enabler and I want to get involved in this. So I'm going to ask the four of you who have experienced this and have journeyed with your beneficiaries, with your organization, right? If I'm sitting in the audience right now and I really want to do something about providing access to education and I want to start something and do good, what would be your advice to me or to the people in the audience on how to start? Should I start? And what are some of the key considerations that will be critical to driving sustained outcomes and impact? It's a bit of a mouthful there, but basically, I want to do something. Panelists, tell me, what should I do? What are some of the key success factors? And should I even start? All right, I'm not gonna nominate now. I'm just gonna let the passion come through. So feel free to, any one of you can just take a stab at it.
Lillian, sorry.
Take it away, Anusha.
Heather, go ahead, Heather. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you. I will just say that it's so important. One, yes, you've got to get involved. It's not a question now. All organisations must get involved and must have a passion for ensuring all the children, all the youth are educated. And technology, we've talked a lot about technology. It's not just the technology of how to get the information there, but as I've been supporting some of the organisations, businesses can really get involved in the schools and with the children, but through an organisation. And whether it's technology that can help the children learn science better, whether it's technology that can help them market their products better, there's so much that organizations can get involved in. But what I would say, the advice is, please look around what is available, what organizations can you get involved in. You can do it on your own and work with schools, you can work with communities. But from my experience and through the companies, we join together with other organizations. And when you join together, then the impact is much greater. And so I would say, look around what is available. World Vision's got a lot of availability there on communities, how you can work with World Vision there. work with other chambers, work with the organisations, and see how you can add value. And I've certainly seen where organisations have added value into schools. And the more that you're together with an organisation, the more your people are involved. It's not a case of just donating money. Get involved, get your own people involved, and that's great for the motivation, the morale of the organisation, and you can really make a difference. So get involved, have a sustainability programme, get involved in things that make the difference, but work together with other organisations. Thank you.
Thank you. Very passionately and very well said. Thanks, Heather. Anusha?
Gentlemen, you don't mind if I just... okay, so I'm a person, and I've spoken about this many times as well. I like to start small. I agree absolutely with Heather, because you need to go through an organization. Sometimes it's good for your own ego to think you did it on your own, but actually you can't. But starting small, knowing who your audience is, catering to your beneficiaries. Because it's easy for us to sit here and think that we know what the ground level beneficiaries need, but I've learned out of experience that's not how it works. Start small, dream big, start small, and you'll eventually get there. And I just want to add something about we're talking about partnerships. These partnerships don't always have to be financial, because the partnership is with the parent, the partnership is with the teacher, the partnership is with the principal, with me, and with the ministries and all anyone involved in either the education space or the health space. But it's all about partnerships. But please, one little advice I have is start small and know your audience, because once you learn from them is when you're able to expand. Thanks, Lillian.
Thank you so much. I'm jotting down notes because I think it's going to be precious, when I do the summary, because I think these are all very, very good gold nuggets that our audience can take away as they start to reflect on their own sustainability program as well. Okay, now I guess all our female champions have been exhausted. Let's try the male now. Okay, thank you for being such gentlemen. Hosea and Abhishek, come on, one of you must be passionate.
Thanks, Lillian. I can go first. So me and Abhishek were just waiting because ladies first, right? So definitely. So that's really the way to go. Whether I absolutely love your question. What we need is actually more people getting involved in the world, and whether it is for me an individual or an organization. And we talked about this, right? The key thing I will share three things. For those who wants to get involved, organizations that wants to get involved, is the first thing is to actually know your value, right? Know your value and what you're bringing to the world, right? Sometimes we start off with, I want to do something. And then people ask you, what do you want to do? And you go, I don't know. And then really, then that in itself is not going to be a very helpful conversation. You could be exploring, but the exploration at the first phase is getting to know what you can actually bring to the world, whether it's an individual or even as an organization, right? I know we talk about the questions about the last mile. Is it something that Microsoft solves, right? What are we good at Microsoft? I can tell you, right? Microsoft Office, Microsoft Cloud. That's what we are really, really good at. That's what we bring to the world. And therefore, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, like partnerships and collaborations are so important. And that's why it's also knowing with a partner, if you're an organization, if you're a nonprofit and you go, I know how to get to the last mile, reach out to me, right? I would love to have a conversation with you on how we can actually bring technology, how we can actually bring, digital literacy to the last mile, to those, like who are the furthest reach. So that's really the first thing, right? Know your value. And then I spoke to it, which is the second point. How then do you bring the value to the world? Right? How do you bring that value to the people who need it most? And then the last part is invest in your value, right? Investing means you put your resources, you put where your mouth is. You also know how to reach out to, if you're a nonprofit organization, you reach out to the right corporates, the right foundations, and the right government to invest in your value as well, right? The investment is not just from your own pockets, but also who can you bring in, right, to collaborate and partner with you. And that's really, where my head is in your questions.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. And Abhishek, bring us home. Tell us a little bit about your perspective.
Yeah, I think a lot has already been covered by Anusha, Heather,
It's
and
very
Harpreet.
hard, right? When you have to be the last one. But I'm sure you're going to give us that one more gold nugget.
I'll go with three. So I think one of the really important things is also to have a very long view. Social sector problems are especially extremely hard to solve, and while we may feel an urgency to solve a solution or bring a solution in 1 month, like 1 year, 2 years, I've seen it takes much larger. More often than not, it takes almost a decade to sort of bring a solution, which then start scaling up really, really well. When we talk about the scale of for national economy, right? I mean, also the way we define scale changes, but especially in the national scheme of things, at least I've seen that a decade is the least amount of time that most dogs take. So having a long view is very, very important, because if you come with a like 2 year span or 3 year span, more often than not, you'll feel like, hey, I came here to solve this, but I couldn't, or why are things not happening, and so on. The second thing that I really believe is very critical is to not let your empathy get the best out of it. I mean, so basically, sometimes what happens, especially I've also seen this with my team, that we're so empathetic that the information that comes around us, we essentially get exhausted, we become tired, and it basically leads to inaction also. It feels like, itna kuch ho raha hai, what would I do? I'll not be able to do this, I'll not be able to solve all of these problems. And that's where what Anusha said, being very focused, having a very clearly defined problem is very critical. And sometimes you might have to choose to shut off from all other sources of information as well, if if your empathy can do that to you. The third and a very important thing that we essentially do as an organization is to do what Gandhiji said in his talisman. So he said, whenever you have a decision to make, or your ego is getting the better of, or is becoming more important to you, just think of the weakest person you can think of around yourself, and then take an action which will benefit that person. So the reason why it is very important for us as an organization, as a principle, and I feel it's very important across, when we're working for, let's say, someone else, there's also this added risk of doing something which is essentially worse than where they were before. So for instance, there are a lot of conversations around men representing women, right? So while men try to solve problems of women, we might make mistakes that obviously women will not. Similarly, when people from urban areas go to solve problems of rural area, or rural areas goes to solve problems of tribal areas, they may add their own biases on perceptions which might not be true. And that's where I feel it's very important to sort of, especially from this position of making change, be very aware of your own egos, your biases, and do things which essentially is extremely focused on the community. And obviously, listening to the community is the first part of it. So not operating from that position of I know everything, I think is very, very critical. So people who sort of jump in and, hey, I know the solution, and I have this technology, and within next 6 months will solve the problem of this. I think that's the kind of scary attitude, and especially tech people seem to have it a lot. I mean, my batchmates from college, they're like, I have built this app, will solve the problem of this, and like, oh, why, wow. But I think having a long view, making sure your egos, etc., are checked. You're not coming from a position of power, and thirdly, basically making sure that you're essentially, you're also taking care of yourself, right? I mean, so I think these three are very important principles for our organization, especially.
Thank you, Abhishek. Actually, what you just shared is something that resonates very much with our organization in World Vision Singapore. One of the things that we are very careful and we always remind ourselves is not to have this God complex. This God complex of I know it all, I'm cleverer than you, I'm here to help you, and I have resources and you don't have. So when you come from that approach, you already, by that mindset and that approach, you would already create in the other person a sense of poverty, and it's a poverty of the spirit, not necessarily a material poverty, right? Because you're already coming with the I know and you don't know, right? But actually the community has assets just as we have assets. And when you bring the two assets together, you actually can empower change in a way that is actually really empowering and gives dignity to the people that you're partnering and working with. So I think it's very well said, especially working with women, working in tribal areas, in rural areas. Having not lived in the rural area myself, is we can often make the mistake of assuming that what is a solution for us is naturally a solution for them, and that may not be true. So thank you for sharing that. It's very, very well said. And playing the long game, right? Knowing that you're not going to see change in 12 months, especially given the very pragmatic city people that we are. It's like, hey, if it doesn't get solved in 12 months, then we move on and we try something different. When actually, the change is just around the corner. So I just want to thank all of you. I just want to do a quick summary for the benefit of the 120 people listening in to us. Just all the great, really wisdom and nuggets that I've kind of harnessed from all the sharing. Look around the different organizations that already exist in your space, in your line of sight, or in your country. Do a bit of research, know who they are, complement, come in and partner, rather than trying to create another similar organization or similar approach, because you can do so much more when you get involved and work together. And then start small, but dream big. Have big, hairy, audacious goals, but start small. And then you will celebrate the success along the way, and you want to do more along the way. And I like how Anusha said that partnership is not just always a financial or a very stated black and white agreement. And it's like Heather said, right? It's a people business. You are in partnership with the parents, you're in partnership with the local leaders, you're in partnership with the community. So they are very much your stakeholder. And so I think partnerships is something that keeps coming up as a recurring theme. Know your value. I thought Hosea really summarized it very well. Know your value, what you're bringing to the table. How are you going to bring this value to the world? And then more importantly, put your resources where your mouth is, right? So invest in what you believe in and your value, and take it there. And if you did not catch it, one of the things that Hosea is also saying is that, Microsoft is really quite keen to see, who can bring it to the last mile. So, hey guys, send your proposals. Last but not least, take the long view. And I think Abhishek is very passionate about it, because you're running a marathon, it's not a short sprint. So really pace yourself. You might not see change in 12 months, you might not even see change in 24 months, but every effort, every step that you take, right, is going to help you turn that corner. And so don't give up before that corner is turned. So I thank my panelists, and I think now we should open up for Q&A. I think we've given them enough food for thought, so the questions are going to come fast and furious. All right. Okay, we've got the first question. All right, from Catherine. How do we strike a balance between the use of technology to reach the last child while minimizing risk for children in the digital world? Online abuse of children have increased tremendously in Asia during the pandemic. Very good question. Excellent question. I think especially in the urban areas, we're seeing a lot of that. So how do you actually protect children while trying to provide access, leveraging technology? This is a hard one. Any takers? Maybe our tech gentleman? Do you want to take a shot at this? I'm sure it's something that's constantly on your mind. How do you actually protect children against a lot of the other stuff that comes online as well?
Hi, Lilian. I can take a step at this.
Thank you, sir.
This is a perpetual problem, right? Whether we are talking about, bringing technology, bringing education through tech, right, to the furthest corners of the world, it's affecting people in developed countries as well, right? And this is not a problem that's solved, that's solvable by individual organizations or even companies. At Microsoft itself, we do work very closely with governments on things like this, right? What we call online harms, right? Whether you call it child abuse, or it's not affecting children only as well, right? When it comes to abuse, bullying, cyberbullying, and all these are real issues that are happening across multiple platforms, on social media. And that's why at Microsoft, we partner very closely, as I mentioned, with governments on regulations, on how do we work at this at a much more macro level. you know, it's something that's coming and up and coming, and a lot more efforts and thoughts are actually being put into this. Do we have a solution yet? I would definitely say I don't think we really know how to solve for this. It's getting better, but on the flip side, I just want to also say it's like a knife, right? You can actually do a lot of good and create an amazing cuisine, but it can
Yeah.
also become a tool for harm.
Yeah.
And the question is therefore, how do we bring the good and the advantage out of this tool? And that's something that requires a much higher conversation. I'm not too sure whether I answered your
Yeah,
your
no,
question, Catherine, but
yeah,
yeah,
I totally agree with you. I don't think it's an easy answer, but I think part of the journey to a solution is just being aware that there is a problem
yeah,
and that we want to actively solve for it.
correct.
So just as we can say that education has gone a tech and a digital route, many of the other things that we know, for example, sex crimes, and a lot of these things that typically did not encroach into the digital space is also finding its way through a digital channel. So I think we do need to address it. But the fact that we acknowledge that this is real and actively partnering with the right stakeholders to bring about change or protection for children is key. So one of the things that World Vision does is in our different area programs, we actively work with parents and children clubs, as well as the community partners, to make sure that we explain the dangers of these and just creating awareness that this is real. It is not something that you just see on TV. So
Yeah,
together with what, for example, Microsoft is doing at a macro level and what we are doing at a community level is a many hands approach, right? So that
yeah,
at every level of engagement, children are aware, parents who are caregivers are also aware. Then I think you start to build this groundswell of preventive approaches. Any of the panelists have thoughts about how Heather, I think you work a lot with children in this space. I'm not sure if I'm putting you on the spot, but hey, anything you want to share on this?
I think Lillian and Jose, you've covered this. It's the important thing to me is that we give opportunities for children to be educated properly, and that they don't end up in the market where they can be abused, or they can go into work which is not the work that we would want them to go into. So I think what you've covered is we must be aware of it, we must prevent it, and we must focus on what we can do. And really focus on giving that education, giving that opportunity, working closely with the organisations, with the schools. But as you said, to educate, and I think that's where World Vision comes in the communities, is to educate and to ensure that the risk is minimised. Because once people get into the working area, which is not a desirable area, then it's just not nice. No?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So totally true. Yeah.
Yeah, if I can add to this,
Yes.
I have a slightly contrary view here to
Sure.
what Jose said. So basically, at least in India, for example, if I talk about regulations, for example, if you talk about physical spaces, there are very solid regulations, very solid laws around it. But where we fail as a country is around the implementation and the justice part of it, especially because of the slow judicial system that we have. So despite having very stringent laws against, let's say, rapes or physical assault or sexual assault, unfortunately, we're not seeing a decline in these numbers since a long time. Where similarly, if we take that space online, and this is coming from having run 3 social platforms so far already. So I feel where if we have to sort of translate the same system online, we will need to have extremely robust and fast responsive moderation systems. Unfortunately, most of the social media platforms fail us on that. If something will happen on Facebook or Instagram, the actions are typically not prompt and they're not enough. Especially the for at Navgurukul, the approach that we have taken for this is to give social components in our own platform, and making sure that the justice system or the judiciary system analog for the digital system at our system is extremely responsive. So if Lillian says that this is what happened, we need to respond to her probably within an hour, and the solution needs to be something which we are really happy with, right? Which she sort of accepts fully. And that's where I feel when we're building these systems, especially online systems, we need to make sure that the justice part of it or the judiciary analog of it is extremely well taken care of. Your complaints can be responded immediately. There's a proper team which is trained to do this. There's a proper education of people to understand those laws, right? In your online cases, online laws. For example, online laws might be, is it okay to ask personal information of someone? So the way we do this is that when the student comes to they do these classes, we ask them to sort of tag the images in appropriate and inappropriate behaviors, so that they have done this training, and at the same time they know that if anything inappropriate happens by what they've seen on those standards, they can immediately report it and get it resolved. So that promptness for us is the key way we are dealing with this. Especially, we are also working with a lot of minors on the app, and we all know that there's a lot of exchange of personal information, including phone numbers, that happens that can essentially lead to the disastrous consequences. And we all might have seen that both in physical as well as online spaces happening.
Yeah. No, it's very well articulated as well. I think what Abhishek is sharing is it's really taking the entire value chain, right? So the first thing is being aware, and then I think once you're aware, then the question that we will be forced to respond to is what are you going to do about it, right? And then what you're going to do about it, there are really different levels of it. There is the let's work with the key stakeholders so that there will be a long-term sustained solution and outcome. So governments and state actors and all that will be quite key in implementing right laws in place. And then where Abhishek came in is like when things are in place, then but do we have the political will and the social will to implement it? And that's where some of these groups, right, whether it's community education, but then also having a safe space where if I detect I'm now trained, right? I know this is wrong or this is right. And if I know that this is wrong, then what is my recourse? Is there a place I can go to? Is there a 1-800 number I can call? Is there someone that can, a group that I can go to that is a safe place for me to share about what I've been exposed to and what is my next step? Because usually you'll be like stuck at the moment, like, what do I do, right? And having that safe space that I can go to get help, whether it's legal help, whether it's just having psychosocial support, having someone advocate and I guess get justice for you would be really quite key. And I think that's quite important as well. And I'm sure that different organizations that all of you represent have some form of it or other. And in World Vision, we have child protection groups as well, and where the community come together and they rally, and they are the ones where they form this safe space that children can report abuse, or they can share that they have, been wrongfully, I guess, approached. So things like that, which is what Abhishek spoke about as well. Just giving that through the line ability to have something actionable. But thank you so much, Abhishek, for sharing. I'm not sure if we've answered it, but I think it shares the passion of the panelists and how they feel about actions that can be taken in a world where everything is not necessarily black or white. What's great also has a flip side, right? To Hosea's point about the illustration of the knife. Can be amazing gourmet dishes. It can also be a murder weapon. And I think it is on us who is convicted about what's right for the children and the communities that we serve, right, to call it out and to address it in different actionable ways. Anusha, any thoughts from you?
Catherine, I think that's an excellent question you asked. And like both Hosea and Abhishek said, there is no answer because as soon as you chop one side down, another side just pops up. But I believe in a very simple approach. That is, and like Lillian said, it's all about making people aware about what's right and wrong. I mean, in general. But when it comes to this, the digital world is expanding at such a rate, it's very difficult for even Microsoft to keep up with. with it, right? So yeah, so we just have to pray that we teach our children correctly.
Yeah. And, Anusha, thank you so much for actually, it's a nice segue to wrapping this session up. I'm mindful of time. And it's really, it comes back to education, right? How can you know what is right or wrong if you do not know how to read or write? So at the root of it all, at the heart of it all, is really just being able to give our children and women the literacy level that allows them to actually be able to understand what they are entitled to, their rights, right? What is wrong that they should not expect as this is the way it is for the last 20 years, and therefore so it should be. So I think having access to knowledge, being able to read, being able to understand what is right or wrong, being able to discern, it all starts with just as basic as ability to read. And just coming back, right, whether it's technology, whether it's technology or it's a traditional method, doesn't matter. At the heart of it all we are saying is that every child deserves the right to have access to education, and from there'll be knowledge, and from knowledge, the ability to discern right and wrong. And then, of course, beyond that, it opens up a lot more opportunities and potential for the child to actually be able to really embrace life in all its fullness. And so this is something that World Vision firmly believes in as well. And we've got a huge effort and really big ambition around unlocking literacy. So if any of you have any really desire to want to partner and work with us to see children having access to good quality education, please feel free to speak with our team, and we'll be happy to tell you a lot more about that. And of course, our panelists as well, they all represent very, very strong organizations, great partners to be with as well. And on that note, I'm going to return the time over to the host.
Thank you, Lillian, and thank you for each of the panelists. I think this has been a very insightful session, very interactive, very lively. Really appreciate you taking the time. We all believe that it is about collaboration and partnerships. It's about starting small, but having a longer vision, a larger vision. And we are so glad that many of you have joined this particular session. We have had more than 120 people logging into it. And I think it's very imperative to know that World Vision works very closely with children. As a child-focused organization, education is really important for us. So as you know, at this time after the pandemic, 150 million people have not been able to access school, and more than 430 million are probably going to drop out of them as well. We speak about child marriages, we speak about child abuse, and all of these issues happening because children are not able to access education. If you want to learn more about how World Vision partners with children, with schools, and with the corporations, you can have a look at the call to action and the write-up on the chat below, and we will be available for any discussion. Thank you all for taking the time to join the session today. We are also at the end of our day one for the summit. So we would really like to thank each of our partners, each of our panelists and moderators for joining. We believe this is of great significance and impact, both for World Vision and to our partners as well. And we want to continue to partner with you for sustainable change for children. We hope to see you all tomorrow on August 3rd for the second day of Limitless for Children for Change for Life. The event link would be open up at 9 o'clock Singapore time. As you log out from the backstage, you also will have the time to also meet with our field officers in the booths as well. You can interact with World Vision staff in the lounge and the other areas as well. Please do take time to network with all the other panelists and also with the other corporates who are present here. If you're posting about today's event, please use the hashtag LimitlessWVI2022. Thank you all for taking the time, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you to my very wonderful panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lillian. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.